Ladies and gentlemen, the Sunglasses Gang is here. 2 out of the 3.
Wear your shades, dude.
Britt couldn't find the shades, but it's all right. Her star is bright enough as it is to light up this entire room. Welcome the lightning round, of course. Kevin Tompkins, Britt, Flinn, Andrew Cooper. Coop has got the shades for literally everybody in the chat, watching on Bettor Sports Network, watching on Fantasy Alarm YouTube. Gang, how we doing?
I am excellent. I have a very good day planned ahead of me. If you guys don't know and haven't seen the million of social media posts, right after the show, I am sitting down with the Lisa Ann on Bettor Sports. It's going to be a special hour-long show for her story in the making, and I could not be more excited to talk to her. So stay tuned after this, and y'all get a double dose of me today.
That's going to be awesome, dude. Lisa Ann, I had time to talk to her at the FSGA. She is an angel and one of my very favorites. The two of you guys are going to have a blast. So that should be a lot of fun. But we have to say goodbye to you around 1:30 Eastern time. Is that the case, Britt? You're bailing on us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You guys are going to have to hold it down.
Big time Britt over here.
Big time Britt over here bailing us. No, that's fine. That's fine. It's worth it.
That's
you
why
guys
she doesn't need the shades, because her star is so bright.
That's right.
It's a supernova.
It's true. I'm rocking my Celtics gear, possibly for one last time today. That's gone great. Alex Caruso and I are going to go out in the city tonight, see if we can stir the pot a bit, get the C's back on track. So that's what I got going on later.
Well, unless you can find the corpse of Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson and everybody else. I mean, good luck.
Go ahead. Keep around. Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish.
I forgot about Kevin McHale, honestly.
Dude.
So yay. Go get all those guys. But we are not a basketball stream. Of course not. We are a football stream. We're talking best ball, but we're not doing a draft today. We are getting deep into the weeds today. We're talking about ADP. We're talking about pricing, how you can use pricing of specific players or groups of players or players on teams to be able to make better decisions on how you draft your players. So just any general thoughts, Britt, on like how you use specific pricing, specific ADP to kind of make more informed choices with the players you're selecting.
Yeah, I think obviously after you get outside of those first 2 tiers or first 2 rounds, the ADP, you can kind of just go off the rails and use that to your advantage to create a unique build. And we've seen in all the best ball drafts that we've done so far, the wide receivers tend to go off the board first, and then you get left with a plethora of value in running backs later on. I think that we've talked about this before, but where the running back dead zone used to be, now it seems like there's a little bit of a wide receiver dead zone. And so there are a lot of different builds and strategies that you can use to make sure that your team is different. I'll give an example. The other night, Sellers was doing a best ball, and all of these running backs kept falling to him. I think Bijan fell down all the way to number 9 in the first round. And he's like, I can't pass up Bijan here. I was going to take a receiver, but Bijan at 9, I'm not skipping over that. And then a few other running backs fell to him. I think he went 3 running backs in a row just because the value there was so good. And then he ended up filling out the end of his roster with a bunch of high upside wide receivers. And so it can really make your build different. And in a tournament like Ball Mania IV, that different build is what's going to set you apart from the field and potentially win you $3 million.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. You mentioned Sellers. Guys like Sellers, Howard Bender, Matt Deutsch, they're the reason we have to do this show. Because typically we do just drafts live, and we go through, and that gives you a good look. And you always want to have those wild cards in there. But we've been doing so many shows where friends of ours are in the show, family members from the Fantasy Alarm are in the show, and we're just sniping each other. We're taking all the players we like on purpose. We're laughing about it, which is a good time. And that's what happens in your real life draft. So it's good to have that look. This time we're going to go through and just look at what normal people do in a normal people draft with ADP. And it's so important to get an idea of who you can get when. And one thing that I know, Kev, you often talk about who you have to sacrifice to take certain players and what builds you might have to sacrifice. So like Sellers, for instance, when he starts running back, especially towards the end of the draft, you're sacrificing a huge chunk of these wide receivers that are going super early. So that's a big part of it. When you look at it and say, what stacks are possible? And in these ones, most stacks are possible. Kelsey, Mahomes is the one that's kind of out of your control, right? You take Kelsey, you hope you get Mahomes. When we start looking at the super flex drafts, when those come back around, wait till we look at those, because there are some stacks that are just straight up impossible. Like if you do a super flex draft, you're not getting Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Like it's not happening. So that's a good reason that we look at these is let's see what's possible, what we can do in every draft. Because there are some stacks later you can do in every single draft if you want. You want to stack Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs, yeah, you can do that for free, right? So let's take a look at ADP, get an idea of what's possible, what's not, what's realistic, and then we'll get back to doing the drafts with all the family members that we're doing. Make sure you're set up with Underdog. Use promo code Fantasy Alarm. They'll match up to 100% of your deposit, up to $100, and then you'll be in with us. And then jump in the Discord where we're doing drafts. This week we're doing one on Best Ball 10. Specifically for guys like Jerry, who lives in Hawaii, Scott Frankel, who lives in Las Vegas. They can't do Underdog. Most of them will be on Underdog. Best Ball 10 this week, guys. Get in the Discord. Let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to go back on to the, the structure and everything like that. Like you just selecting great players, that's one thing, but selecting them in a structure that's going to maximize the amount of points you score, especially in a tournament, is king. It's paramount. And with each selection that you make, it's all about opportunity cost. So if you don't select, if you select 2 running backs, like Coop said, you're sacrificing wide receivers. And especially this year when wide receivers are getting pushed up in volume, like we're looking at, maybe last year, the wide receiver 12 was getting taken at the middle or early to mid 3rd round. Now, looking right here, Chris Olave is going at the end of the 2nd and possibly even getting pushed up to the middle of the 2nd. And then just running backs. I mean, remember, a few years ago, we were seeing running backs, litter the 1st round. You could probably see 6 or 7 running backs. Now the 7th running back on average, Tony Pollard's getting taken at the end of the 2nd.
I pulled up the ADP in 2007 and there were 14 running backs that were coming off the board before the first wide receiver. The only non-running back player that was going in the 1st round in that year was Peyton Manning. That's how much things have changed now, where you look at it and what is it? 14 running backs through the first 4 rounds, Kev? That's crazy talk to me. But yeah, that's the world we live in.
Well, that's and also the average fantasy gamer is getting smarter. The market is getting smarter. Underdog fantasy, as far as their ADP, all these people drafting in real time, it is so important to know that, when you take this, you can take this to your redraft because you're likely going to be able to see something like this. The sharper drafters are going to be taking those wide receivers when people are going to be taking, running backs in the 1st round, and you're going to have an edge just on a point scored basis, even in your redraft leagues, but especially in best ball. So it's incredibly important to see, the opportunity cost. You take, an elite tight end, you're giving up wide receiver. Wide receiver this year is more important. It's the most important position to fill, especially in a tournament like this. And we've seen, I'm going to share a tab right now. 5 wide receivers through 9 rounds. This is via RotoViz and their Underdog roster construction explorer. Just the hit rates, the advance rates in Best Ball Mania the last 2 years. Getting 5, 6 or 7 wide receivers before round 9. You're seeing just big numbers, especially advancing wise. So it's very important, and I'll reshare the ADP here. But just looking at the board and just knowing all the drafts that we've done, there's not a lot of egregiously priced players, but I'm going to throw this name out as far as the overall draft board, the most egregiously priced player. We could talk a little bit about him because I know that's in your wheelhouse, Coop. Dalton Kincaid at tight end 11 going in the end of the 10th round. I think his floor is so low in that offense, and we want to talk about how good of a fit that is with Buffalo, and we want to talk about him being a slot receiver, but it's as good as potentially being a slot receiver, actually being a slot receiver. So I think Dalton Kincaid, he might not even run 50% of the routes. I think him at tight end 11 is just absolutely bonkers to me. Looking at the entire landscape, looking like Pat Freiermuth, Chigakonkwo, Dalton Schultz. We know those guys are going to be running a lot of routes. Dalton Kincaid's a complete wild card at tight end 11.
Yeah, and it's a matter in this particular format. To me, I look at it, it's a matter of ceiling versus floor. For a guy like Kincaid, he does have the ceiling of being a top 2 target on his team, which is how you get that top 5 upside. But the guys that really break the mold and do things that are, that are game changing are the guys that lead their team in targets. George Kittle was leading that team in targets. Darren Waller, when Antonio Brown, called his GM a cracker, and then Henry Ruggs went to jail. Like
Bingo card.
Yeah, there it is. There's the bingo card. That was the, like Mark Andrews when he had 150 targets in 2019. That's what you're looking for. And as long as Stephon Diggs is there, you're not quite getting that. So for me, I would much rather, if I'm going to spend up, I'm going to go for a guy like Waller or Pitts, where we've seen them have 1,000-yard seasons in this league, and Waller could actually lead his team in targets. I look around that Giants team, and there's no Stephon Diggs over there, at least not that we know of. Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson emerges or something this year, but it's not there yet. So for him to be drafted as a top 12 tight end, it's kind of crazy. I would even go with, look at Dalton Schultz. I think Dalton Schultz has a better shot of leading that Texans team in targets than Dalton Kincaid does, the Bills. So for me,
he's not even the best Dalton as far as tight ends. Like, that should kind of tip you off.
Yeah, exactly, dude. There's definitely a Dalton logjam there at tight end 11, 12. So again, a guy like Chigakonkwo, I value just as much because we've seen it in this league. And the crazy part about Dalton Kincaid and Chigakonkwo, especially from a dynasty standpoint, is Chigakonkwo is only 1 month older than Dalton Kincaid, and I've seen him flash in this league. So when people say I say that I would pay a late first for Chig, and people say that's crazy. Well, that's what people are paying for Dalton Kincaid. So I don't see why those guys wouldn't be valued similarly. Same age, and one of them's actually flashed in this league, multiple 40-yard catches. Give me Chig over Kincaid all day long. Yeah, I'm not doing that in any of my leagues, in fact.
See, I'm going to disagree with both of you guys here. I think that the fact that the Bills traded up to specifically get Kincaid, they're going to give him the ball. And having that tight end designation means that they can pay him less. They can throw him the ball as much as they want, but they still got a value there on their salary cap. Why go out and draft one of these other wide receivers when you can get a tight end who, by a lot of analysts' opinion, is the best receiver in this year's NFL draft? Not just best receiving tight end, the best receiver. I think that they're going to dramatically shift what they used in 12 personnel last year, which was 8%. I think they're really going to jack that up and make sure that Kincaid gets that ball. They wouldn't have given up so much capital if they weren't going to use him. So I kind of like where he's going there. I think his ceiling is super high. And in that Buffalo offense, I don't really think his floor is that low either.
Yeah, I think the upside, there's clearly some upside there, but we have to remember, even Evan Engram, who is also a first round NFL pick and finished top 5 as a rookie, he needed Odell Beckham Jr. to get hurt in week 4 to have that kind of upside. So I don't know. I just look around and the way I see it is if that's what we kind of need from him to get that to deliver on what we're looking for, there's a lot of guys where I look at it and say,
he's already got it.
He's already got it, or plenty of these guys that if somebody gets hurt, they would have high upside. But I feel you on that, Britt. I just wish he wasn't going tight end 11. I mean, I wish he was just going where a normal rookie tight end would go, like 17, 18. That's
right.
Yeah,
look at Sam. Look at Sam Laporta. I think his price relative to his situation with now you've got Jameson Williams out for 6 games. You've got some ambiguity there. I mean, Sam Laporta is going at what, tight end 19 right now, in the beginning of the 14th round. I almost think those two could be flip-flopped.
By terms of their overall, fantasy outlook throughout the course of the year, I really do think Laporta is another great guy. But man, I just cannot get off Kincaid. I think Gabe Davis really didn't show a lot as the wide receiver 2 last season. I know that they paid Dawson Knox, but he honestly didn't do a lot last season. I would not be surprised if Kincaid was the number 2 in targets on that Buffalo roster at the end of the season. And I'm willing to pay that. I might be in the minority and completely going against what we're talking about here, but I fully believe in Kincaid.
Well, yeah. So so if you like Kincaid in that situation, are you drafting Laporta at his ADP as well, Britt?
Oh yeah, I love Laporta. I think that they both have similar ceilings. And if you're going for a value, it really depends on who you've got on your team, which positions you want to stack. There's so many different factors that go into this. But just from a pure standpoint, I like Buffalo's offense better than the Lions' offense. And don't forget, I know Kev is the noted ageist here, but Marvin Jones is back with Detroit and he's old. But with that lack of target competition, I think that he could still produce and maybe drive down Laporta's value and his ceiling a little bit. And especially when Jamison Williams gets back, I think Kincaid has an overall longevity plan that's much higher than Laporta.
I just don't know how much separation Marvin Jones can get with a walker, but I'm very interested in seeing the optics of that and seeing how that goes. I took Marvin Jones in the 18th round to tack onto a Jared Goff stack. So at least one of my puppy experimental $5 teams can reap the benefits of 9,000-year-old Marvin Jones. But it's very hard for tight ends to we saw last year Greg Dulcich immediately walked into an 80% route share. That doesn't happen that often, and I'm willing to. I just don't know if Kincaid can jump right into that immediately. But if anybody can, considering the draft capital, considering what Buffalo invested in him, if he can assert himself, that's certainly within the range of outcomes. One of the most prevailing, kind of narratives so far in the best ball season has been the price of quarterbacks. We've not seen prices of quarterbacks go this high, really ever. We've seen, like guys like Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers go high in drafts, but never in this amount of volume. And I'll share this right here through Michael Dubner from RotoViz as far as where you're able to draft quarterbacks the last 3 years. And the bottom line, the gray line, is 2023. They're going, quicker, faster. Look how far that gray line is as far as, that's Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen. But even like the mid-tier of, the elite quarterbacks are starting to creep up. But as a whole, they're just starting to trickle down now. I think the market is caught up to these quarterbacks and just how egregiously priced they are. Just across the board, we've seen them come down 1 or 2 spots. And I think that continues a little bit. But just the prices of like Joe Burrow and Justin Fields just make them really, really tough clicks when you have to give up the opportunity cost of drafting a mid-tier running back. Like I said, the running backs are falling now. So where you can get a fringe top 12 running back in the 3rd round now. And then obviously the wide receivers are getting pushed up. So you're at risk of getting boxed out there. That's what makes quarterback such a tough click in the middle, in the 4th and 5th round. Even a Justin Herbert, who I love, is still, it's one of the tougher clicks there. What do you guys think about the state of quarterbacks right now? Are you kind of holding off on those guys until their price gets cheaper? Because that's another thing too, where if you're drafting a portfolio of teams, you can afford to maybe say, hey, I'm going to draft some of the later guys until those prices come down. And then when they get into like maybe the 4th or 5th round for a Justin Herbert, Burrow, and not have to take a guy like Trevor Lawrence, I feel better about paying those prices than paying them now.
Well, this goes back to what we talked about before, like 2007 ADP, where the average fantasy gamer catches on to these like unique and kind of deep cut strategies a little bit later, but they do catch on. Like the first time I heard someone say 0 RB was not 2013 when Sean Siegel wrote that article. It was when, friends of mine in leagues started talking about it, doing it a couple of years later. Right. And that's kind of how it goes. The whole idea of like the Konami code quarterback used to be kind of a deep cut thing, but now everyone knows what that means. Like just even casual fantasy gamers know what that means. Everyone follows at late round QB on Twitter. Everyone knows JJ,
and Rich Rebar. Yeah.
Right. So there's no more, I know Rebar wrote the Konami code one, but there's no more, waiting and taking Lamar Jackson at QB like 18. Right. Even as a rookie, you look at Anthony Richardson. That's the clear one here where he wasn't even the first QB taken in the NFL draft. Bryce Young was, but he's going at QB 10 and Bryce Young is going at QB 23 because we know that the Bears last year could be the lowest passing offense in 2 decades and still have a viable quarterback because he ran for 1,000 yards. So that's, to me, what's pushing these up. The guys that like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Fields, who again, coming off one of the lowest passing seasons of all time. Like I looked at it, and if you take not only the Bears but also the Falcons last season and take their passes per game, you have to go back to 2009 just to find a team that threw as little as the
The
Falcons.
Jets, I believe, right?
The Jets, yeah, the Jets like 14 years ago. And to find one lower than the Bears, you have to go back 20 years. So it's like that's how ridiculous it is that we're looking at with that. And he's still going QB5. So I think what we're going to see though, Cav, is you're right that these middle guys are going to start falling a little bit, where you're going to, and I've seen it in a few drafts already, where you can just get a crazy discount on like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff or a Derek Carr just because they don't run, but they're still going to throw for 4,000, maybe 5,000 yards in a 17-game season. So I think those guys, Anthony Richardson is going to continue to go up, but I think these other guys are going to come down a bit.
Yeah, and I think the only reason that these three premier quarterbacks are going in the second round is to build your stack, because you've got Travis Kelce, you've got Stephon Diggs, and you've got AJ Brown. And you know that if you wait on that, you're not going to get your stack. But if you look at the fantasy points last season, Joe Burrow was going 2 full rounds after these guys, and he only finished 40 points total behind the QB1 in Patrick Mahomes. You can get so much value in rounds 2 and 3 if you opt to wait just a little bit, and you'll still get a premier quarterback, but still be able to build your roster. And then you look at guys like Geno Smith and Jared Goff, who are still, and Kirk Cousins for that matter, who are still going very late. Geno finished as QB5, Cousins finished as QB7, Goff finished as QB10. You can still get so much value if you wait just a little bit on these quarterbacks and fill in and have so much upside on other positions on your team that you don't necessarily have to waste a full pick just to get that stack. I feel like people are forcing the stacks a little bit in those first 2 rounds, and they're really missing out on a lot of value and upside in those middle rounds.
You know what I'm wondering, I wanted to ask you guys about, is that Justin Herbert, athletically speaking, is one of the more athletic QBs we've seen, and he can run, but in the previous offense, they didn't do much of that. They did a little more dumping down. I wonder if maybe in this Kellen Moore offense, we do see more Justin Herbert running. Have you guys put any thought into that? This guy, he had like a crazy combine, Herbert. Like he is.
We've seen Dak Prescott do that, in the Kellen Moore offense, before he got hurt and, hurt his ankle. I think he had 6 and 6 rushing touchdowns. So that's certainly well within, Herbert never really did that at Oregon. He was not a rushing quarterback by any means, but, that's certainly in a skill set. I mean, these guys, all these quarterbacks coming out now have some kind of athletic ability. Like we're seeing the age of the statuesque quarterback. It's gone. Like the only guys that are left are like the older guys, like the Aaron Rodgers and, Derek Carr to some extent. But, even those guys can at least scramble a little bit. Like,
I don't know. Goff and Cousins are 2 of the least mobile quarterbacks.
They need some kind of apparatus.
Can Goff even do a QB sneak? I don't know if I've ever seen it.
I don't know.
That's homework for next week.
That is.
I'm sure he can. He had 17 yards on 17 QB sneaks, or however many rushing yards he had.
True, and yeah, that's pretty true.
That is true. I know we're getting up against it with Britt. Before she does go, I do want to talk about one more very important thing that we, certainly with the draft ADP that we've got up here, the running back dead zone, I feel like is no more. It's kind of switched over to, I would say it's the wide receiver dead zone. I cannot stress this enough. You need wide receivers, and you need them in volume. You need just before like round 10, you have to have at least 5 almost minimum, or else you're going to get absolutely locked out. Like the wide receiver dead zone has kind of replaced the running back dead zone. And I'm looking at kind of the point of no return with wide receivers. And it honestly,
it's round 10. It's round 10.
It's round 10, round 11. I look at Jameson Williams at wide receiver 48, and maybe even Elijah Moore a little bit.
I don't mind Juju. Juju's the last name that I look at and I say, hey, this guy could lead his team in targets. And, and it's realistic for him to have, even on the Patriots with the Bill O'Brien offense, that's the last guy where once he goes, I just say to myself, all right, rookie stabs, like at least for a little bit. And then I come back to some post type sleepers and stuff. But looking at Juju right there, that's the last one I feel comfortable taking. If this was going to be a redraft league, that's probably the last guy I feel comfortable putting in my lineup as my wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're looking at these wide receivers, yeah, you've pretty much got to have a big number of them, before that point, because after that, we've talked about it where, in previous years, wide receiver was the best pick you could make in a draft until like round almost 7. Now it's late. Like running back is the best pick you can make from about round 8 until the end of the draft. Like, because running backs are getting pushed down, you're finding quality there. I mean, in the 8th round, you look at it like the James Cook, Javonte Williams, who's gotten, is possibly ready for training camp, but still a risky pick there. But we know what he can do when he is healthy. James Conner is pretty much locked into a 3-down role. I know it's not a great offense, but he could be the Josh Jacobs of this year, where he's a boring, uninspiring click, but you could possibly get top 8.
I don't mind anybody in that round. So to give you guys, for those that can't really see on you, if you're on mobile, or if you're just listening, it's James Conner goes RB 27. David Montgomery goes 28. And I like David Montgomery in this format. Best ball, where if he just scores a touchdown, he goes in your lineup. That's what Jamal Williams did for us last year. I know he's not going to have 17 touchdowns like Jamal Williams did, but that's his job now. That he's in the Jamal Williams job, and he has 25 pounds on Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, this isn't a situation where they're going to go in and Gibbs is going to take over everything right away. If anything, it'll be a Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara situation from when Kamara was a rookie, and they were both RB1s. So I have no problem drafting David Montgomery there. Next is Javonte Williams, who Kev just talked about, and then James Cook. I like those guys. I mean, that's the last round where, I kind of still like taking Michael Thomas and Juju and those guys, but comparatively speaking, when you compare those running backs to the wide receivers, it's not even close. I'd rather have the running backs there. Britt, I want to ask you before you go. So we just talked about, like I said, Juju at wide receiver 50 is kind of where I don't feel that good about taking him. Let's say this is your board of wide receivers. These are the next guys after wide receiver 50. You have Odell Beckham, Allen Lazard, Tyler Boyd, Jacoby Myers, Darnell Mooney, Sky Moore, Zay Jones, Jonathan Mingo, Rashee Rice, Michael Gallup, Alec Pierce. What are you doing in that range? There's basically 2 schools of thought, it seems, clearly. There's a couple slot guys that are like medium floor, medium ceiling guys, Boyd, Jacoby Myers, or do you just go full wild card with a rookie? What are you usually doing there, Brett?
I kind of like the Darnell Mooney, Michael Gallup situations where last season at times they were forced to play roles that they didn't necessarily excel in. With Darnell Mooney, for example, now you've got DJ Moore as the wide receiver 1. I think Mooney fits very well into that wide receiver 2 role, and he could actually do a lot more in that role than he did as wide receiver 1 last year. Kind of the same thing with Michael Gallup. I know that they brought in Brandon Cooks, but he's older. He's been hurt. Reports have said that they're working Gallup into a heavier role and a higher snap share. So I kind of like that. But then with Rashee Rice and with Jalen Hyatt also there at wide receiver 59 and 62, I think those guys have such high upside that they're definitely ones that I'm willing to take a stab on as well.
With the speed for Jalen Hyatt, especially in best ball, I could see him having some big touchdowns. It's just, and that's such a wild card offense. Like, I do like Darren Waller. After that, it's all over the place, man. You just kind of got to pick your giant. I've been taking some Wan'Dale Robinson. I've been taking some Jalen Hyatt. Kev, are you ever taking stabs on, Isaiah Hodgins, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell? Like, they got like a who's who of who's over there, right?
The guys that I'm taking shots on are guys that are undervalued by the market. Like, I think Darius Slayton is criminally undervalued throughout the market. We've seen him get a high route share, and I just think that, Isaiah Hodgins, the Sterling Shepard, those are guys. I mean, not that Slayton isn't a guy, but I think he's more ingrained in the offense than those guys are at this current point. I know they're kind of making that wide receiver room right now. Other than that, I do like taking stabs on upside profiles. Tyquan Thornton's the 2nd-round pick last year in an ambiguous, wide receiver room in New England. I think he's the most athletic wide receiver in that room. And if they want a little bit of juice, we saw, in in a few games there. He had a game with 2 touchdowns in the middle of last season. I think he's got enough juice to be able to stick around there. John Mechie is a wild card that I think is a little bit underpriced too. Even a guy like McCole Hardman, like why can't he be, maybe the Randall Cobb? I know they literally have Randall Cobb, but why can't he be like a shorter A-dot, a souped up version of Tyler Irvin? We know that Packers offense, the Shanahan type offense that they want to run in with the Jets. So why can't he be a guy that he's kind of slept on? If they get rid of Corey Davis, that's another,
Corey Davis ain't going nowhere, dog.
No, his contract is a bit.
All right. Well, before we go, Britt, I just want to say, Britt, thank you for joining us. I know you got to take off, right? Anything last thing you want to throw out there before you hit the road?
I just think that there are so many different ways that you can structure your roster. The key to doing that is go in with a plan, not necessarily for a specific player or group of players, but just kind of know what you want going into it and be ready to pivot if things don't go your way. Have a backup plan, and almost more often than not, you can get one of those 2 stacks and one of those 2 builds, and you're going to be really happy with your team after that.
There you go. Love it, Britt.
So,
everybody, make sure you
stick here after this.
Stick here after this. Britt is going to be interviewing Lisa Ann. She got to go get ready for that, but that's right after this at 2:00. So make sure you hang out with us after this. That's going to be a great show. I'm going to be hanging out. Britt, we'll catch you then.
Love you guys.
Crush it, Britt.
Peace. All right. So I just wrote on the topic you were just brought up. I just wrote a full article on that. The whole concept is using uncertainty to your favor, right? Here's the idea. In the early rounds, certainty is your friend. We draft Jamar Chase and we draft Justin Jefferson because when they're healthy, we can be, I don't know, Kev, what, 99% certain that they're going to be good players. That's the whole idea of that. You want certainty in the beginning. You ask yourself in the beginning, why? Why am I drafting Justin Jefferson? Because he's a megastar. Later on, uncertainty is your friend. Later on, we switch from asking why to why not. Like, why can't John Mechie, as you said, be one of the top pass catchers on that team, right? We look at the Panthers, right? If Bryce Young is going to be good and he was the first overall pick and we seem to like the coaches and stuff over there, why can't one of those players on that team, on the Panthers, become a viable fantasy asset? None of them are being drafted within the first 10 rounds or so, as we're seeing here. So you taking that uncertainty and kind of picking a guy you like, or just taking, a lot of times what I do, if it's really ambiguous, I just take the cheapest guy, or I just take whoever has tight end eligibility. Like that's kind of what we were doing with Evan Ingram last year. We said, okay, if we think Christian Kirk's going to lead the team in targets. We don't know for sure. We think that, it could be close between Zay Jones and Evan Ingram. Why not take the guy with tight end eligibility? This is how we use uncertainty at these end of these drafts to our favor. So the Giants are a good team where I look around and I say, I don't know. Like I'll take Darren Waller because he has tight end eligibility. Same with, you just said the Texans, Dalton Schultz. I don't mind it. The Panthers, any other teams come to mind, Kev, where even if there's one guy that we know is number one, there's some uncertainty as to who's number two. What are some teams that maybe come to mind where we can start taking these stabs later on in this draft and say, okay, there's uncertainty here. I'll just take either the cheapest one, or if I truly believe in my hunch, then I'll take a very specific one every time. Is there anyone else that comes to mind team-wise?
Yeah, Packers easily. Christian Watson goes as wide receiver 19, but you could take late stabs on Jaden Reed. You could take any of the tight ends. You could take Romeo Dobbs. Like those prices are not prohibitive to being able to. And Jordan Love, if you want to stack that team and you think that team is going to, Jordan Love is going to be an excellent quarterback and he's going to be the long-term guy for Green Bay, he's going to have to show it this year. So if he's going to be able to lift these boats, who are the boats that are going to be lifted? Watson, the market certainly feels that, and with a wide receiver 19 price tag, he's going to be the main guy, but it's not just going to be him. Is it going to be one of the two tight ends they drafted, whether it's Kraft or Musgrave? Is it going to be Romeo Dobbs? Is it going to be Jaden Reed? That's the uncertainty, but the prices aren't prohibitive to where you can take even multiple of those guys. If I have Jordan Love, I have no problem taking a stab, another round later on a Dobbs or a Jaden Reed to just stack them up and make that bet that way.
Yeah, and not to mention Christian Watson, we do like him a lot, and especially in this format because he was capable of hitting home runs. He had that one home
Spike
run
weeks.
that
It's all about spike weeks.
right. He had that one home run that was basically hit that kind of bounced off his hands a little bit, but we trust him to make those plays. The nature of that type of role doesn't really translate to a guy that's going to get like 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 targets though in a lot of weeks. You know, like he to me feels like a guy that is running those higher A-dot routes, and he will probably have some weeks with 8, 9, 10 targets, but that leaves a underneath route role for somebody like to come in and be a Marquise Brown type guy that every once in a while, you know, an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Cooper Cup even that just gets peppered with those shorter targets. So I don't know, like you said, that whole group there, including Luke Musgrave, we don't know who's going to be in the slot running those underneath routes. I'm taking stabs on a bunch of those guys. So
Yeah,
definitely
and
interested.
and the ambiguous, even going to like backfields. Like right now, look at the Miami Dolphins backfield where Devin Achane's RB36. You've also got Raheem Mostert. You got Jeff Wilson. I think Mostert and Jeff Wilson should be flipped right now. I think we know what Wilson's role is going to be in that offense, just being the bigger back. I think, the Mostert and A-Chain, their skill sets are kind of duplicative. So it doesn't make sense with the market. Why Mostert's going ahead of Wilson, considering Wilson, I think his role is more defined in that offense. I know A-Chain is the shiny toy, and I think he's going to be excellent in that offense where there's going to be a lot of opportunity running the ball. And I'm certainly willing to take stabs at RB36 because I think a 10th round price, like we said before, running back in like the 8th round going down is the best pick that you can make as far as getting value in the draft. But Jeff Wilson, I swear, if he stays at that price, I'm going to have like 75% Jeff Wilson.
Right, because that's the thing about best ball. When he scores a touchdown, he's in your lineup. When he doesn't, he's not. But Jeff will if there's this is one of the things I like to think about in terms of the roles. There's a number of different roles within the running backfield where there's a guy that goes out there on first down. There's a guy that goes out there on third down. A lot of people think that those are the only two situations. But what about this situation, Kev? Week 1, Tyreek Hill is 45 yards downfield, doing his thing. The defender just grabs him in the end zone, pulls him down. The coach gets to send any player he wants down there to the goal line to punch in that touchdown. Who is it going to be? On this team, seems pretty obvious, right?
Jeff Wilson, yeah.
It's definitely not going to be A-Chain, right? Like Jeff
wasn't
Wilson
Chase Edmonds last year.
It wasn't
one career goal line?
Right. Raheem Mostert is another guy that he's always been undersized. That's been his problem injury-wise. So I asked myself, okay, it's the other two scenarios are the running the clock when you're winning and you're trying to run it out, who gets those carries, or when you're down and it's 2-minute drill, who gets those carries. I do think Mostert probably still gets those snaps unless A-Chain comes out and proves that he's an amazing pass blocker. Yeah, that ends up being the big thing that holds rookies back is can they pass block and their understanding of the playbook during the 2-minute drill, because you're calling 3 plays. Honestly, they're calling 3 plays on the sideline before they go out there. And then you run those plays and you get maybe one chance to huddle up and you're calling 3 more. This person needs to know all the audibles. He needs to know everything going on. The veterans do typically get that particular role. But with the home run hitting ability of both those guys, I'm willing to take them. Kev, I wanted to ask you about this ambiguous situation. The New England Patriots, obviously to us, Ramondre Stevenson is the number 1 guy. But in the modern NFL, including the Patriots backfield, I think they are going to have somebody else that plays a meaningful role, right? So I look at that depth chart and I'm wondering what stab am I going to take? There's a few different options. Very last year, coming out week 1, people forget that Ty Montgomery played like 25 snaps and got 4 targets. He got hurt, missed pretty much the entire season, but I guess he's going to be back. Pierre Strong, another intriguing name, had the fastest running back time at the combine last year. Then you go through the depth chart, James Robinson they brought in. So of that group, you have James Robinson. We've seen him obviously have a great time when he was with the Jaguars. He came out this offseason, says that he believes that he's one of the best pass catching backs on the team. It's a strong part of his game. Of those guys, Kev, who would you consider taking a stab on? I think Kevin Harris and JJ Taylor probably not going to factor in as much. I think it's going to be one of those 3 guys if someone's going to carve out a third down role.
If it was going to be anybody, just based on how I know Bill Belichick kind of tailors his offense to, I would say the stab would be on Ty Montgomery. That was a guy that I was on, one of only 2 people in Scott Fishbowl to draft Ty Montgomery with the 22nd pick. So it's really tough to see his injury because I think he could have certainly carved out a role. And then if that had happened, we might not have seen the big spike in receiving ability Ramondre Stevenson showed. So that's just a big domino effect there. But yeah, if I'm going to take a stab on somebody that's not Ramondre Stevenson, obviously that's, very, they have to dedicate a lot of draft capital to drafting Stevenson. I mean, these guys are all free. It's almost like just a pick of who you prefer, whether it's Pierre Strong, whether it's Ty Montgomery. Like you said, James Robinson in the Athletics first, 53-man roster projection, they had James Robinson not even making the team, which is, I don't know if that's super telling or whatnot, but it's really a far fall, easy for me to say. With James Robinson, what he did, only a couple years ago with the Jaguars, where I believe he was RB8. So it's tough but they certainly have what they want in Ramondre Stevenson, but they certainly need, I don't know, call it the archetype of satellite guy or somebody that can at least catch passes and be a bit of a different look than what Ramondre Stevenson is. So I think I would look at Ty Montgomery. We know he's done it in the past with Green Bay, with New Orleans, now with the Patriots, at least in this very, very small sample size. But Montgomery would be the easy bet for me. But, as we've seen with these younger players they have to force the issue. And that's what they can do. Sometimes they just render some of these older guys obsolete with what they can do. And a lot of it's about pass blocking too. If only we got points for that. We wouldn't be getting any from Antonio Gibson, but from a lot of these other backs, if we could get some pass blocking points in fantasy, I think I'd be drafting a little more running backs.
If there were points for pass blocking, I think it would be a lot easier for us to figure things out, because that seems to be the ingredient for a lot of these guys, where we wonder why they can come out and have these breakout years and then they just go away. Like why Phillip Lindsay can have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and then nobody wants him. And it's because he cannot figure out those schemes, and he was never really big enough to do it anyway. So just a cautionary tale to Phillip Lindsays and James Robinsons of the world, for those people that are investing heavily in Dameon Pierce, and we already kind of saw it with Tyler Algier, day 3 picks or undrafted picks, especially if a new coach is coming in, it's a new regime, that is dangerous.
Yeah, you are on the chopping. You're not quite on the chopping block, but you're very close to it. It's very hard to have any kind of security in Dameon Pierce. He certainly, that's an interesting play, because they did bring in Devin Singletary too, and I will draft a little bit of Devin Singletary, but I'm drafting a little bit of Pierce too.
For now. But I mean, the thing is, the writing's on the wall. It's like Michael Carter as well. Like they've already opened that door of saying, okay, this guy, Dameon Pierce, Pro Football Focus had him graded out outside the top 120 players. And they're, I'm not sure, I forget the name, but they actually hired a guy from Pro Football Focus to be part of their front office this year. So they definitely know what's going on with those numbers and those statistics. So right. It's not something that's just for us. Like somebody from their company was hired into the Texans front office. So they know what's happening with a guy like Dameon Pierce in terms of his pass blocking grades. And there's a reason that Devin Singletary, a guy that was top 5 in routes run for running backs last year, was brought into that team. So just be careful with these guys. Make sure that if you're going to spend up on a running back, that his job, at least part of his job, is secured.
Absolutely. And I know we touched on it before, but I do kind of want to dive into a little bit more with rookies, because rookies have just some of the most fluidity with pricing, because we know a lot can happen. One blurb from NBC or whoever these the companies are, with touting training, he's running routes with the ones. As soon as we see that, they go up a round in Underdog, and they're very quick to pounce on that as far as ADP and draft. So, looking at some of these rookies, especially in the kind of the mid tier where we see the Jonathan Mingos, the Rashee Rices, and even like the running backs going in here, Devin A-Chain, getting these prices now, like Devin A-Chain or even like Kendre Miller, those are guys that if we get a Alvin Kamara suspension levied, if Kendre Miller, and Jamal Williams, I think could probably go up at least a round once that Kamara news hits. This is something, if you're drafting a portfolio of teams, maybe you hold off on drafting some of the veterans But the rookies, I feel like they're as cheap as they're going to get. And I think they can really only go up unless an injury hits.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side, you have to be careful with the NFL. You never know. Like I've seen this multiple times where a guy in a situation like Kamara's, where we thought the suspension was coming, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everybody was like, "Hey, just kidding. Nothing actually happened." And now,
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill's was the craziest one because that happened, and then they went and drafted Mecole Hardman, and everyone thought that was a replacement. His value tanked, and then one day they were just like, "Oh, he's fine, and we're going to sign him to an extension," right? So, like, just remember with this Alvin Kamara stuff, like, who knows? I know the NFL is trying to do more to research beyond these things that get settled out of court, but sometimes it does pan out that way, where they just say, "Oh, I guess it was just a big nothing," right? So just be careful with that. If you're gonna, I know their ADPs are fine, but don't go crazy reaching for those guys until we kind of know what the situation is. With the rookie wide receivers, what I've seen in recent years is at least their rookie year in Dynasty. Then this is where the confusion is. In Dynasty, you want to draft the best possible talent. As a rookie for rookie production, we need that situation. The best example that I can think of, I went back, looked at a bunch of years. 2010, the number one rookie wide receiver was the Buccaneers' Mike Williams. Not Mike Williams from that we know now, but Mike Williams back then.
USC Mike Williams.
USC Mike Williams back then. And he was on a tanking. Didn't current Mike Williams also go to USC? No. Did they both go to USC?
They might have. We'll have to look that up.
Anyway, so Mike Williams, the Buccaneers, Mike Williams, they were like a tank, kind of a rebuilding tanking team. And he came out and he had the best season in fantasy by far of any of those guys. And a lot of us at the time were like, this guy's the best rookie, right? Like he's the best guy from this class. And it turns out that he was not. The guys that were best from that class were Dez Bryant and Demaryius Thomas and Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders and Eric Decker and Golden Tate and all these other amazing guys from that class that we look back and we're like, who the hell was Mike? Why do we think Mike Williams was best? Well, because he had 1,000 yards and scored 10 touchdowns. This, like, same thing with last year. We think Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are the best guys because they got the most targets. But do we know definitively that they're going to have better careers than Drake London and Jameis Williams? We don't know that, right? So with these rookie wide receivers in best ball, you have to factor in the situation. For me, I look at a situation like what Marvin Mims is facing right now, where it's not only a team with multiple wide receivers and a pass-catching tight end, but they brought in 2 blocking tight ends in Chris Manhertz and Adam Trotman, and they brought in fullback Michael Burton. How in the hell are they going to find a full-time snap share for Marvin Mims? I don't see where they're going to pull that from. Like,
unless those wide receivers gets traded,
but even
it could still happen. It would not be out of the realm of possibility that Courtland Sutton. I would think it would be Courtland Sutton if they're going to trade one.
If Courtland Sutton gets traded, and then they have Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick and Marvin Mims and KJ Hamler, and obviously Sean Payton had to bring Marquez Callaway and all his buddies over from the Saints. Right. But let's say the starting 3 wide receivers are Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick and Marvin Mims. When they bring in fullback Michael Burton, who comes out of the game? Do they bring out? Mims. Do they take Mims out? When they bring in Adam Trotman or Chris Manhertz, they're not going to take Greg Dulcich out. Maybe they will, but they're probably going to take a wide receiver out. So for me, I look at that and I'm just like, where's the upside coming from? How does this guy play a full snap share? Kev, when you look around, which rookie wide receiver? Well, hit us with the obvious one first, and then are there any others you think can play a full snap share? Because there's one that I think you and I both love here.
Yeah, it's clearly Jordan Addison, and the ADP is starting to, he's come up about 8 spots since draft. I
will not rest until his ADP is higher than Jackson Smith and Jigba. We're
almost there. Well, JSN's it's what, wide receiver 30, so we're almost there. Jordan Addison has his blinker on in the exit lane. Like
the moment someone drafts JSN in your best ball draft, you should draft Jordan Addison. That should be until the ADP flips. That should be the trigger. You sit there, and when someone drafts JSN, you draft Jordan Addison. That's what I've been doing. Because have you seen Addison go before JSN yet, Kev?
Yes, because I've done it.
Ooh, you crafty. Okay, so if you're drafted with Tompkins, then you have to
You're not you
preemptively.
you are not getting a shot at Jordan Addison. It is like the AJ Brown corollary with, our old co-host Gary Haddow, who would say, if you're in a league and AJ Brown is available, you are not getting him because Kevin will get him.
Right. Yeah. Well,
That's
that's
the Jordan Addison corollary.
there's a few of those things for me. Usually I do it at tight end where it's like I sit there and I say I want Kyle Pitts. I just wait until somebody takes George Kittle, and then I turn around and take Kyle Pitts, right? So for me, there's a few of those out here, but that has been the number one where I wait, someone takes JSN, I take Jordan Addison. But now you're right, Kev. They're only going 5-6 picks apart, so maybe that
It's
season's
not
over.
really the reach, and that's the thing. The reaches are only a reach is a construct, really, in your own mind. Like, I understand, there's obviously egregious reaches. Like, you're at the third round, you're not going to go and take Ezekiel Elliott. Like, that's just not going to happen. It should never happen, and more than likely, Underdog's going to throw that draft out if you keep drafting like that. But drafting a guy 4 spots ahead of a guy because you have either a specific player take, you feel like, oh, hey, Jordan Addison, I feel like has a better shot of getting on the field, which, I mean, we're looking at just how Kevin O'Connell runs his personnel and runs the offense, has a much better shot of getting on the field immediately than Jackson Smith and Jigba. So that's certainly not egregious.
Better Boss points out, he says he drafted Kendre Miller 6 overall, RB3 in Dynasty. I have no problem with that. I think Kendre Miller is a good player. It's just for the time being with Jamal Williams and Alvin Kamara, that's a Dynasty play. JSN is my number 1 wide receiver in Dynasty because I think he's going to have a trajectory like Chris Godwin where he, starts off playing the slot, kind of a part-time snap share, and as Tyler Lockett fades off into the sunset, he becomes the full-time flanker that moves in the slot for 2 wide receiver sets. But for the time being, I think there are guys that just have better opportunity. Not that I would necessarily draft them ahead of JSN, but besides Jordan Addison, I don't have to. Like JSN goes, and then I can wait. And I guess why, like we talk about ambiguous wide receiver situations, why can't rookie Jonathan Mingo with rookie quarterback Bryce Young lead that team in targets? Adam Thielen's getting up there. DJ Chark has been a question mark, both in terms of health and also in terms of his ability to go up and get the football. That's kind of been a knock on him. What if Jonathan Mingo is just the best wide receiver on the team from day one? That's a real possibility. I know it's very popular and cool in the dynasty community to hate on that pick, but what do we know? Steve Smith Sr. liked it, and he was the only one that had Cooper Kupp as number 1 wide receiver in the year Kupp was drafted. So I don't know. I'm willing to take those stabs in a situation where it's uncertain. Let me ask you, Kev, Rashee Rice, are you in or out? Because that's kind of an in or out one.
That's definitely an in for me, just because A, you're getting passes from Patrick Mahomes. B, there's so much wide receiver ambiguity. I mean, Sky Moore couldn't even get on the field in year 1. I think he capped out at like 50% routes in a given week last year. And you obviously Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Justin Watson, those guys are just kind of space fillers. I mean, Justin Watson's really good. He played a lot of routes or ran a lot of routes last year and blocked a lot. So clearly they value him. Like, if they need a wide receiver, he has a dark horse shot of being the second target in that offense next to Travis Kelce. Like, why can't he be at wide receiver 59? I'm more than willing to take a stab. And, if he doesn't work out, it's an 11th round pick versus having to spend an 8th round pick on Zay Flowers, where if you're drafting, a team, obviously your core picks should be the first 10 spots. You are expecting points in most weeks out of all those guys, right, obviously given a bye week. So having to spend an 11th rounder or a 12th rounder certainly hurts less. Drafting Rashee Rice, who, certainly has a world of upside with the team that he is on, versus drafting a guy like Zay Flowers, who I know Todd Monken offense, Lamar Jackson's back. They added some wide receivers, obviously had Mark Andrews. There's a lot of ambiguity, but there's a lot of questions about how much is this team going to pass. I don't think there's those philosophical questions that you have to answer about the Kansas City offense. It's really just about a player.
Right. And that's why I love picking any of the Panthers, because you just said first 10 rounds, right? Like that's your core. Those are the guys you need to depend on. Not one single, for those that can't see this board up close, not one single Panthers wide receiver goes off the board in the first 10 rounds. Round 11, you get Mingo, wide receiver 58. And then you get Thielen next round and Chark the following, or actually No, yeah. Mingo goes round 11, Thielen 12, Chark
Chark
13. I just say, hey, you know what? I'll take any one of them. I really don't care. I'm drafting enough of these teams that I'll take any one of those guys and be happy. And then next time I'll take the other one. And I'll give myself a few different builds, a few different looks at $3 million. And for you guys out there that want to get in these and practice and do these with us, become a Fantasy Alarm member. Right now, there's a promo code going, my favorite one, promo code COOP, COOP, gives you 50% off for the next 6 months. You become a Fantasy Alarm member. You get everything behind our paywall. You get in our Discord where we're hanging out behind the paywall, talking about ball every day, doing these best ball drafts with members. On Thursday, we're going to do one on best ball 10. Usually we do them on Underdog, but we're trying to help out the boys. If you use Underdog, we're going to do the Underdog the following week. It's going to be use promo code Fantasy Alarm. They'll match up to 100% of your deposit, up to $100. Get in with us and do these drafts with us. It's a ton of fun. We talk a ton of trash, and it just gives you the best look at ADP that you're going to get at this time of year, right? So get in, do those, and make sure, do a few with us, and then do a few of the Best Ball Mania ones where you can win $3 million, because we love when Fantasy Alarm members win big money. Last year, we had a guy win $1 million on DFS. We have had multiple $250,000 winners. We've had a ton of guys posting their basketball wins and baseball wins in the chat on the Discord. So come hang out with us. It's a good time, baby.
Absolutely. And I know we're up against it. I have a couple minutes, so I wanted to touch on this real quick. How do you feel about the week 17, especially for tournaments? I know that's a very, are you in or are you out, very divisive topic, but how do you feel about at least correlating your team a little bit, especially in the back end? Because I feel like on the back end, it's more important to correlate a little bit more versus just taking best player available. But where do you stand on the week 17 stuff?
In the big tournaments, I absolutely do it. Obviously, there are going to be some situations where the teams, when we get around to week 17, aren't as good as we thought they were going to be. I mean, How many primetime Broncos games I had to watch the Broncos play on Christmas?
That Broncos Colts game was the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah. That Thursday game. Yeah. It's brutal. But there are a lot of matchups that we like. I mean, obviously Bengals, Chiefs, love it. I personally am, the more I look at it, man,
is there one that sticks out to you as far as maybe one that you don't think is getting enough publicity?
We talk about it all. We've been talking about these a lot, but dude, I'm starting to really like that the Dolphins Ravens one, the week 17 Dolphins Ravens. Because if you think about, I know we're not going to get the exact same game as last year, but that Ravens game last year was insane. Like the Ravens ran like 85 offensive plays. So I'm feeling pretty good about that one. I also like the Chargers Broncos. But Kev, I mean, this question's for you because I'm pretty sure you have the whole schedule memorized at this point, do you not, for week 17?
Yeah, we're pretty much into there's a couple teams that maybe I have to think about it, but
who do the Jags play? Scamper's throwing that one out.
Jaguars play the Panthers.
Oh, that's why Scamp likes that. That's the old cat matchup.
That's the old cat battle.
One
I really like that I think could be very, very sneaky. Colts Raiders indoors.
Yeah.
That could be a track meet. Certainly that could be like the Anthony Richardson. If he is a league winner, we're going to find out against the Raiders defense. I also like, and it's one of the lowest. Titans could be interesting. Certainly.
Ooh, Texans Titans division game too. So,
and not just because of Derrick Henry either.
Well, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry's good for 200 yards every time he plays the Texans.
Yeah. Trust me, Colby Conway knows that narrative. He's got that down pat. But
that's scary.
Another one too that could be maybe up and down a bit. Rams Giants. Like there's a lot of intriguing games here. And some of these teams are so easy to stack. But
once we get some clips of Matt Stafford throwing the football and looking like Matt Stafford, I think the narrative might change a little bit on him.
So you're not a Stetson Bennett guy?
Not quite. I think Stafford and Bennett are about the same age, aren't they?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Stetson Bennett, by the way, the only player in NFL history as a rookie to earn his league pension.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think Stafford, from what I was just reading something saying that Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford have been hanging out playing tennis and stuff all offseason. They're both fine. I'm not even kidding. That they're just
what about pickleball?
Nah, dude, they're big leagues. They're athletes, bro. Pickleball is for when you kind of settle down with knees like
pickleball's for me.
Pickleball is for people like myself. So yeah, get out there in your pickleball leagues. Use promo code Fantasy Alarm. Thank you everybody for joining us today for Lightning Round. Make sure you join us on Thursday for the Best Ball 10 draft we're doing, and make sure you stay tuned to this channel because coming
Yes.
up next, the legendary Britt Flinn is interviewing the legendary Lisa Ann, and it's going to be awesome. I can guarantee you that. So thank you everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for that. That's coming up next.
Coop, take them out.